All right, Warlocks, we're starting off with you today for our Edge of Fate builds. These builds are going to be for the Legend campaign, and they're designed to kind of take you through that content and then be playable after. We are going to do a little bit of talking about the artifact, but mostly the early stuff, because I'm not assuming that you're going to be hoarding bounties early on, and if you are, then you can probably guess what you should take later on based on what we're taking earlier on. So more importantly, while you're going through the campaign, leveling up, getting the artifact done, these are the things you'll probably want to take. So this will count for all of them. We're going to talk about Strand, Stasis, Solar, and Prismatic. Basically, whatever you can fit in from the ones we're going to talk about, you might as well fit in. To start us off, we have the Flame, Fiber, and Freeze mod, which is going to give you a Solar Strand and Solar Stasis Siphon mod. Those will be additional options. Instead of having to pick two separate slots, you can put them together. That'll be a good pick as long as you are doing something with Solar. And if you're going to have a Darkness thing instead of Kinetic, great pick. Scavenger mods being reduced to 1, great pick as well. If you are going to be playing Stasis, this Frost Armor one, no one cares about. Yes, you're going to get plus 20 reload speed. I don't think that's a game changer at all. I'd rather take the Ammo Scav being cheaper or the Siphon mods. However, the Woven Mail one's pretty good. You're going to get extra grenade and extra class stat. Going into the expansion, we're not going to have the best stat spreads to start out with, but this can help you either plug the gaps or get you some extra energy, get some of that grenade damage or some of that class ability overshield early on. And later on, once you are making these builds, you can kind of account for this and have this be a little bit of a boost for you whenever you have Woven Mail. This will work on Prismatic and on regular Strand, so nice piece to consider there. The rapid precision rifling thing with scout rifles is whatever. No one's really going to be using scout rifles in the Legend campaign. If you do, you can think about this. It's just reload speed though. But I highly recommend taking either Tightly Woven, the Siphon mods, or the Scavenger mods. In that middle slot here, we're going to say you're going to get maybe 1 or 2 of these. I think you can get up to 2 of these and then 3 of the 4th column. So if you're going to take 2 of these, Fever and Chill is the obvious standout pick here. We're getting headshots with Solar weapons gives you Radiant, and headshots with Stasis weapon gives you a stack of Frost armor. The Radiant is much more upfront and powerful than the Frost armor, so I will recommend, if you have to pick one or the other, to focus on Solar on this. On top of that, Elemental Benevolence is pretty good. We're giving elemental buffs to allies, gives class ability energy. If you're playing solo, you're not trying to buff people, don't worry about it. You have Frost Renewal if you're playing Stasis. This will let your Stasis shield explode when your shields break. It will freeze combatants nearby and then give you, another thing of Frost Armor to replace that. I'm assuming this is going to have a cooldown, so it's not going to be totally reliable, but this will get you a bit more utility out of Frost Armor in general. And if you do have only 1 stack, that should still work with Fever and Chill in this combining to give you that AoE freeze with a cooldown. Reciprocation is a sidearm buff. If you're going to be playing with sidearms, you can run it, but I don't think it's going to be a game changer. Refreshing Threads, though, pretty useful on any class. You just need to match your super energy with the pickup that you're picking up, and you will get energy to your least charge ability. So if you're doing Strand, pick up Tangles, you'll get ability energy. Great flex pick, especially if you're going to be playing a not featured element. If you do go later, though, Threaded Blast is obviously good. Cauterized Darkness is going to be good. These other ones are kind of okay. And then Frigid Glare is going to be good, and Shield Crush and Radiant Shrapnel are the standout picks here. I don't think Elemental Overdrive is going to be crazy unless it's more than like 10%. If it's like 15%, this could be a pretty solid pick. But Shield Crush and Frigid Glare are going to be more consistent probably. But you can tailor it to whatever you're running. Like if you're running just Stasis, you could take both of those. You know what I mean? So let's go ahead and break into the builds. Now I'm going to have 1 Strand build, 2 Solar builds, 2 Stasis builds, and 2 Prismatic builds. For anybody who is going into this expansion and you're wondering, all of your old builds should work fine. If you were running Getaway Artist last season, it's going to be good now. You want to take Geomags in, go ahead. There's not a bunch of featured element things that you have to worry about. There's no surges for you to match in the Legend campaign. So take what you're comfortable with. Use what you know how to use. This is just going to be some things that are going to either synergize really well early in the artifact or are newly buffed and are going to be interesting options to pick back up again. But for the Legend campaign on Warlock, starting with our Strand subclasses, we're going to do a Swarmer build. Now, Swarmers is a very powerful exotic. I was trying to run Metaiodoxia yesterday and see how that did, and I thought it was underwhelming because the explosion radius on the Suspend is small. Redlings at least will give you some consistent damage, and even in GMs they were doing totally fine. So here's what we're running with this, right? Weaver's Call is getting changed to make your Perch Threadling on not just strand damage, but any weapon damage kill. So this will work great if you are getting later into the artifact to get the Radiant on headshot hits, because you can run Lord of Wolves or any other solar weapon to give yourself Radiant. That will also contribute to giving you Weaver's Call if you're getting kills with it. So think like maybe the Rocket Sidearms are going to be a good pick here. Mind Split Invocation upgrades your Grapple Grenade to be both a Grapple Grenade and a Threadling Grenade, so you're going to double up there with Threadlings. If you need the extra utility, you could always change that out with the Wanderer for some Suspend. You don't have another choice for melee here. You are taking your regular melee. Use that to unravel. That'll get you some extra damage. Your Threadlings will also do that. Just very nice melee to have. Obviously, you have Needle Storm, which is a good one-off super. Dump that into any tanky target whenever you need. Now, for fragments, I'm not running any Woven Mail. I have not run Woven Mail on most of these classes. If you want, I would drop Isolation for warding in the expansion, so that when you're picking up orbs, getting Woven Mail, and that will give you that grenade and class ability bonus that we saw in the artifact. However, if you're not too worried you're not making enough orbs, just take Isolation and you're pretty close. Evolution is pretty mandatory here because that is going to give you more Threadling damage, and we're working with Threadlings here mostly. I have Fury on to give you some more melees because Unravel is very good. The melee here is very strong. This could also be swapped out for warding. These are your two flex picks here. Generation is the standout pick for Strand. You don't really take anything else because that is dealing damage, gives you grenade energy, and that's very strong. If anything, maybe you could also consider Propagation, giving you unraveling rounds if you are using a Strand primary. This would be good with something like Barodiad if you choose to run that. Barodiad is a very powerful primary weapon. Will do pretty good damage into tanky targets. I have opted to go for what I was running in my GM the other day, which was a Unloved, which has Hatchling and Tear. This is specifically for this build because you're going to get that isolation effect for Sever, as well as Hatchlings here to give you some more damage. Lotus Eater I had on for Shoot to Loot because we were in a GM and I didn't want to get too close to have to grab the orb, so I was just Shoot to Looting orbs so I could power my surges. If you are not worried about Shoot to Loot and you're picking up orbs in normal Legend campaign, which is going to be pretty fine, you could consider switching into something like Multi-Mock or taking an Attrition Orb Velocity Baton. This will be just as good pretty much, as long as you don't have to worry about actually getting in to get the orbs. I had Microcosm on for what we were running, but take whatever heavy feels best here. There's no real restriction on this. The most I would consider being optimal here would probably be taking something like a Heathens or a Cataclysmic or some solar weapon and packing on Lord of Wolves. I don't want to put Lord of Wolves in every build because at some point it's going to get boring. So for right now, let's say you're running this Attrition Orbs and Microcosm, you'll drop Needle Storm, you'll have Microcosm proc for your damage phase. If you want to run Lord of Wolves, you want to take advantage of that Radiant, go ahead. I'm not going to consider the mods too much here because the mods that I have slotted, like most of these aren't going to exist. Like the Reserves mods are going, the Heavy Ammo Finder mods are going, Siphons are going to have the double thing to combine, so you're probably going to be running that. Some of the Weapon Surges, Recuperation are going to be changing up. We're going to be having a lot more stat questions. So one of the things I want to point out is, in theory, these font mods are going to be a lot more powerful when they're giving you these 20 stat points for getting over 100, giving you the extra bonuses, or even getting up to 100 with these linear benefits where every point is a significant chunk of benefit. These you can run multiple of at the same time, and you can also run multiple different versions of them. So you can run a font of Endurance, Vigor, also take Focus for your grenade. And each of these will give you 20 points in the expansion. If you have 2 of them, they will go for 40 points. And if you do 3 of them on here, you'll get 50. So I think 2 is the most you're looking to stack. The point at which you want to do that is questionable, I would say. Depending on the build that you're running and your normal ability uptime, I would consider doing this if you consistently have high uptime without something like Firepower or Impact Induction or Grenade Kickstart contributing to your build. If you have a grenade build that's working well like that, then why not take 2 fonts of focuses as well as some font of endurance to match up your healing per orb? And maybe on your boots you could put the weapon focused one here, or you could take super on your helmet, give you some bonus super damage. So I think when we're going into the damage phases, we've been focusing a lot on surges for damage. So going into the expansion, I think surges are going to matter for your legs, and they're probably going to stack better than the weapon damage font. However, it is still important to consider the rest of your slots where you could make up the difference for not having a 200-200 weapon super split by putting fonts on there for your super to give you that extra energy. But for the most part, put on the siphons for your abilities, put on the grenade mod here or the melee mod, depending on what you want to focus on. The heavy-handed and hands-on will work with grapple melee and your regular melee, so it is preferred if you're doing grapple. If you're doing like a regular threadling grenade or you're doing shackle grenade, you probably want to take firepower and focus on the actual grenade damage. For these impact induction, these recharge things are always good. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Legs, surge mods are always good. Recuperation is not going to be a mandatory pick anymore, so I think you can go for things like innervation or invigoration. I wouldn't worry about insulation. Insulation is only 4% of your class ability, while these two are 10% of their respective ability. Absolution is actually more to insulation than, Absolution is more to your class ability than insulation is, but it costs a little bit more. So take your picks. Scavengers are going to be discounted if you have the artifact mod, so I would very much consider those, especially if you're running GLs or rockets. Very, very important. And in class ability, if you are using fonts, time dilation is a no-brainer. Reaper is a great pick. If you have the capability, you could run multiple time dilations to squeeze a little bit more, but I think just one will be enough for most builds. And the gameplay loop for this build is very simple. You are just throwing abilities out and trying to make threadlings. Your tangles will make threadlings, your class ability will make threadlings, your grapple will make threadlings, your hand cannon will make threadlings if you have hatchling on it. Just do whatever you would normally do with Strand and get Strand kills, and you'll get more threadlings from getting kills. This is a build that will provide you extra damage and make you feel like a summoner. It doesn't need you to micromanage a bunch. If you are doing woven mail, you will have to make sure you are picking up orbs as often as possible to keep that timer up. It is only 5 seconds. But this will get you through the campaign pretty much no issue. And even a hand cannon with a reasonable special weapon should get you through pretty much any majors and champions. And when you get to the boss fights, switching over to Microcosm or just your favorite Heathens will be more than enough. But moving on to our Stasis build. Stasis build 1 is Osmiomancies. This is not a Bleak Watcher build. I have a Bleak Watcher build coming up, but obviously if I'm running Osmio, I want to be running Cold Snaps. I want to be using Cold Snaps personally. It'll give you 2 charges, and hitting them will give you energy back. It will refund, and you run that with Ice Flare Bolt so that every time you shatter them, they will make a new tracker that will track out more enemies, and you can chain freezes for a very, very long time. You can chain it between 2 enemies back and forth, or even sometimes on the same enemy if they're near a wall or something else where the tracker can turn around. We have Glacial Harvest here just to get some shards, which will give you some frost armor as well as some melee cooldown. You have the option of taking something like Whisper of Hunger if you are feeling like you don't need the extra overshields with Rime, or you don't need Rending to shatter crystals. If you're using a special weapon that's very good at shattering crystals and you're not using a primary for it, obviously Rending's not required. I do have Rending on here because in my build, I have a Rime Stealer explosive payload hand cannon, which will one-shot frozen enemies and crystals, which will give me 2 stacks of frost armor if you have enhanced Rime Stealer. Great pick with Stasis builds. A little less mandatory if you're using the harvest aspects to give you frost armor, but it is always nice to be able to do that from a distance. Explosive payloads here for extra damage just on top. I do have a Judgment that is also pretty good here with Headstone, and then either Rime Stealer or Timed Payload. Personally, if I was looking for like a perfect option here, I would say you want something with Rime Stealer and a damage perk. So Rime Stealer with an explosive payload perk on a regular hand cannon, or any other weapon. If you have something like an SMG or a scout that you like to use that has Rime Stealer and a damage perk, I think that's a great pick. Now I have Choir of One on here. There's no synergy for this in the artifact, but again, I didn't want to just use Lord of Wolves again. You have the option of Icebreaker if you want to get headshot hits. I believe you'll need like 3 headshot hits to get Radiant with Icebreaker, but then killing 1 major with anything that's not Icebreaker will give you those shots back, so it's not a huge commitment. If you do want to just be simple with it though, and you don't want to do Radiant and you don't want to do Solar and Stasis, pick Choir of One. It's a great pick, very fun, very flexible, will work great with your Stasis freezes and shattering those targets. I have Chill Inhibitor on here because once again we're running a Stasis Surge on our legs there. Take a reserves. The grenade shatter effect for frozen targets sometimes works with your firepower and sometimes doesn't. I have it on here in the event that it does end up proccing when I get a kill, but I don't have more than one because it doesn't happen often enough for me to think I need two. And like I said, mods are kind of up in the air. I will say for most of these builds, this one and the Swarmer one, you would want grenade to be high, melee wherever, and then you can kind of work in your class ability and your super. There's not a ton I think is required right now. It's going to be a little bit before we know exactly what stats you want to be running on anything, but you don't need 70 and everything. 70 and everything would be equivalent to having like triple 100s right now, which isn't mandatory for most builds. You can skip a lot of things with just having things in your subclass and the artifact. So I'm not too worried about stats going into it. But when you are playing this and you're picking up new armor pieces, I would pay attention to what you're getting and test out some combinations that seem interesting to you. So our second stasis build is a stasis turret build. Now Rime Coat will upgrade your stasis turret to give it more range and stasis crystals, and it will give you a storm that if you stand in it will make your weapons freeze on hit basically. So this is a great one to use on Prismatic and on Stasis. This one is just a Stasis build to give you something to run if you're not running Prismatic, if you don't have the final shape but you still want to play Edge of Fate, you can run regular Stasis. So for this, I'm opting for a weird combination. I think normally you would take Glacial Harvest, but I'm planning to be farther away. If I'm using this build, I don't want to be directly on top of the enemies. So instead of taking Glacial Harvest and trying to get close enough to pick up the shards, I'm still taking this Rime Stealer weapon, and I'm taking Icebreaker. This is going to be much more focused on Icebreaker for shattering those targets, which will give you an ignition with Icebreaker on top of the regular shatters and the turret freezing them again. A great combination. The crystals can also be shattered with Icebreaker for that combo, but if you need it, you can do Rime Stealer here. You still get Frost Armor, but we're not focused on it because we're planning to be farther away, planning to be safer with our turret. So I've taken Ice Flare Bolts and Bleak Watcher so that when you destroy something that is frozen and you shatter it, it will send out a Seeker that will freeze other nearby targets. That will be a little bit faster than if the turret was to go one by one and freeze each target. So this will let you freeze groups a lot more consistently while still having the uptime of the turret. We are taking Shards, which is pretty much required for 100% uptime, as well as Durance, which will extend the duration of your turret being up. I do have Rime on here in case we are doing the Frost Armor stuff. I would say it's a good idea to try, as well as Rending here to get some more shatters. If you want to switch these things out for Fissures and some Torment here just to be a little more consistent, you can. I don't think it's necessary. You will be totally fine running just what we had before with Rending and Rime. Easons is still here because if we're going to be running that Radiant effect, why not have two solar weapons to take advantage of Surge? You can stack them. Great pick. Obviously, this is not the roll. This is what I had on me for funsies. But you take your best Easons or Solar Heavy if you have a Solar Machine Gun. Great time to take machine guns in the Legend campaign. So our first solar build is actually a fun one that does not really work right now. So I don't have any gameplay of this to show you, but this is a Starfire build. Starfire is getting buffed up to 5% per hit. The way it works is right now, you have to have empowered damage to get Fusion Grenade energy. While you are in a empowered rift or a well is the only time that counts. Going forward, it's going to work with Radiant, and you're going to get that 5% instead of 2.5%. That should scale with your grenade stat up to 100, where it should be 7.5%. Along with that, the regular cooldown of your Fusion Grenade is going to be lower. So altogether, you're going to get much more uptime on your Fusion Grenades. It should be a little bit closer to how Starfire used to feel, where you would pop something in damage phase to consistently get grenades back. We used to use things like Wither Horde, or what we would have now is the area denials you could use. But I opted to just take Lord of Wolves here because if you're dumping this, you're going to be getting your grenades back. The hits are fast enough. And in the subclass, I wanted to take Lord of Wolves with this because we're taking Empyrean and you want to get solar kills to extend the duration of your Radiant and Restoration. You are able to run that by eating your Fusion Grenade with Heat Rises, which will give you Heat Rises active and let you jump in the air for long. And if you're in the air, you get melee energy back. But while Heat Rises is active, you can Phoenix Dive, which will give you Restoration. Then you can extend it with Ember of Empyrean and Lord of Wolves. I do have Solace on here to extend the duration of Radiant and Restoration, just so that you can have more of a window to get your first kill with Lord of Wolves. Ashes is on here because Fusion Grenades are close enough to igniting that in case you're doing anything else with Scorch, they should work together, like hip firing with Lord of Wolves. And then Torches is on here to give you Radiant, obviously, and you can carry both of those infinitely with Empyrean. We have Well, because if you're on Starfire, you want to have that source of empowered / Radiant damage for your damage phases. So this build is all about using Fusion Grenades to kill enemies, then dropping a Rift or giving yourself Radiant to get your grenades back. Getting kills will give you some more energy, so if you're doing ad clear, don't be afraid to throw some fusions at ads. But when you're in a boss phase, you want to drop your well, or at least get your radiant up and just lay into the boss and then throw your grenade as often as possible. If you have a good demolitionist heavy weapon, for which case, if you are using a fusion grenade, will reload your heavy weapon. So as long as you're waiting long enough for that cooldown internally to end, which is about 3 seconds, you can keep doing that and not have to actually reload the weapon. Great tech. Not everybody's still doing that, but I think Starfire is going to be a lot better than it has been, especially if you can get your grenade stat over to closer to 200, where you'll have a 65% damage boost to your grenades. So definitely a build to try out, and if you have high grenade armor right now, that is a good thing to pair with this, as well as those fonts we were talking about earlier, giving you some extra stats to get closer to that 200 to get some more grenade damage. All right, our second solar build is going to be Sunbracers. Sunbracers are very fun, they're very powerful, they're still very good, and they'll carry you into this expansion. Now, I have Well of Radiance on just because people like running well and hard content. I think in the Legend campaign, you can definitely afford to take Song of Flame instead. It's not going to kill you or anything like that. You will want to take the same Heat Rises Touch of Flame here. If you want to run Hellion, I would probably take a different solar build. Speaker's Sight, obviously a great one to run with that. But for Sunbracers, you want Heat Rises because it gives you melee energy very, very quickly. You want your melee to be up as often as possible because every time you get a melee kill, Sunbracers will proc, which will give you 4 grenades back to back of solar grenades. So of course we take Touch of Flame, which upgrades your solar grenades into being super blob grenades. And I took some weird things because I was already doing Empyrean and I didn't want to build into it again. But you definitely could just build into that Heat Rises, Phoenix Dive, Empyrean Restoration loop. But I took Resolve here because we're going to get a lot of grenade kills, and why not take the Cure? You could take Ember of Ashes for more scorching stacks. I think it'd be fun if you're playing in a team. Take something like Benevolence. So you can be a lot more flexible with that. We still have Lord of Wolves on, but Solar Rockets, Solar Rocket sidearms are still going to be very, very good with this build. It's not really important what you're getting kills with, as long as you're getting kills in the air, and that continues to include your solar grenade. As long as you're like an inch off the ground, that will give you your melee back. This will let you blanket the map with solar grenades and clear ads, as well as majors and champions. I think you'll want to, once again, focus on your grenade stat the most here, because that is a lot of your power, but you do want a decent melee stat as well, because that is going to affect how much Heat Rises gives back to you. So you want to have probably close to 50 to 70 on your melee stat at least, and that 100 or more in your grenade stat. So let's look at Prismatic builds real quick. Prismatic is, once again, you can run the same things that you've been running. I am going to show you a Getaway Artist build. I think it's a little nerfed because we're obviously losing a slot for Bleak Watcher and Hellion are going to have only 4. So I've taken one off, and I've opted to go with Facet of Purpose to use Needlestorm to give you Woven Mail. That will give you some extra grenade stat, which should give you bonus cooldown to your Storm Grenade, which will let you do your Getaway Artist more. You don't want to go too high because Getaway Artist does not scale with your grenade damage. However, the higher you go, the more likely it is to have a grenade up while your Arc Soul still has duration. So if you are going to be throwing grenades in the middle of your Getaway Artist proc, then go ahead. The extra damage is always going to be good here. The melee is probably what you want to take because that will give you your Tangles, which will give you some extra super energy if you are running that one in the middle slot. And obviously, I've still got Lord of Wolves on and Fair Judgment now. Fair Judgment will let you get the headshot hits to give you Frost Armor, which lets you do that extra synergy with the Frost Armor exploding and freezing enemies nearby. Lord of Wolves is here to give you Radiant, and it's probably the best thing. So if you want to like have an easy time in the Legend campaign and you're playing solo, it probably would be run Getaway Artist with Bleak Watcher, and then just take Woven Mail, which will give you some bonuses. Take Lord of Wolves, which will give you Radiant, and then literally anything else is going to be good. I don't think you need to worry about your stats too much apart from getting to that 100 in Grenade, which will maximize your cooldown time. Finally, the last build I want to show you for Prismatic is going to be another Lightning Surge build. I really like Lightning Surge builds, so it is not getting nerfed. You're not losing any fragment slots. You get to keep all of these. I still have Facet of Purpose on here for running Song of Flame to get you Restoration. I like Restoration. If you wanted to, you could put Needlestorm back on and take the Woven Mail for your grenade stacks. This isn't really grenade focused though, so I figured why not take the opportunity to run some Restoration in the build. I have Solitude on here for some extra darkness energy because Lightning Surge will fill up your light bar very quickly, as well as Cold Snaps are on here, and Facet of Hope to give you some faster Phoenix Dives, which when you're going into melee all the time is nice to have. Now, if you are in a very hard piece of content, healing rifts are a bit more consistent, right? Like you can drop a healing rift and it will keep you alive for a little bit longer than Phoenix Dive would for the cooldown time. But Phoenix Dive is just so convenient. I'm not going to tell you to run one over the other whenever you're going. I would say you do want a 1-2 punch shotgun going forward until you get a 1-2 punch solar shotgun hand cannon, at which point you could probably swap that out for the primary in this build. 1-2 punch is getting changed to work with slide melees and all melees, so you will be able to 1-2 punch to get 150% bonus damage on your lightning surge, if nothing else. You want to run a Syntheseps with that? I recommend Hoyle. I don't have a Hoyle Syntheseps on Warlock, so I've got the Necrotic Synthos, which has been fine, but Hoyle Synthos is definitely what you want. Lightning Surge is not getting nerfed, so why not keep running it? Finally, you do have Vex on here. I picked Vex specifically because getting a kill with it gives you the 20% bonus damage for about 7 seconds or so, and getting the headshots with it will proc your Radiant as well. So you can get Radiant for 20%, this for 20%, giving you about 44% just for using Vex and shooting it. If you want to pair that with Heathens again, feel free. Cataclysmic's obviously also a good choice. The linear fusion mode on this will benefit from the Radiant as well. It'll give you just a bit more things to punch through. And once again, your mods are kind of up to you. If you're running this, you could run the Solar Strand Siphon. But I don't think builds are too complicated. These are all things that have kind of been popular already. I don't want to stay on them for too long, and I wanted to include a couple of things for you to run. I don't have like a detailed guide for how to run these because most of these are variations on older builds. For example, the Starfire build is just an old Starfire build. They haven't changed. So that's one I explained the most though because it's been the least used recently. So if you have any questions about how these builds should be run, you can ask me, but it's pretty much just chuck out your mainstay thing. So Stasis Turret is just throw Stasis Turrets, and that's pretty much it. Legend Campaign is not too terribly difficult. Most of these builds will be able to take you through on their own. You might want to switch for a boss and put on Well if you're on Warlock, just because it'll keep you alive and be easy. In which case, you could run Speaker's Sight. I don't think you're going to need it in this content. So I'd recommend taking Sunbracers so you can keep up some ad clear and still have some fun, or take Starfire if you really want to test that out. Obviously, Starfire might still feel bad. I'm not expecting it to, but we're going to have to wait and see how it really does. Everything else you could even use now in this episode. I just did not include any of the artifacts in the footage that I have, so they'll work in this season, but there's only like 3 days left, so I figured Edge of Fate's more important, right? So there you go, Warlocks. 7 Edge of Fate Legend Campaign builds. I think you can still run Arc and run Geomags, you can run Void. It's just not featured, and a lot of people really want artifact boosted classes for this. I don't think you need to do that at all. You're going to have a totally easy time running just about any build, especially if you have a second person with you. The Legend Campaign is very achievable in one day. We're going to be doing it day 1. I don't know what build we're going to be on. I don't know if I'm going to be playing Warlock or Hunter or Titan for the contest raid. So I'm undecided. I might run just all 3 of them, but hopefully these will take you through. I think most of them are pretty common or variations of them. Rime Stealer, for example, and the Prismatic builds are not different or strange. They're not very complicated to build into the artifact this season. Just having a solar weapon or a stasis weapon is pretty much 80% of the artifact. So obviously, once you get later into it, you can just tack on more solar, more stasis, more strand, and you'll be totally fine. And I will see you guys again tomorrow with hopefully, let's say Titan builds tomorrow. We're going to do Titans next. Thank you guys very much, and I will see you again very, very soon.